OnePlus has been around since 2013, but for at least the last 7 years, the average person would say, OnePlus? Is that a Samsung phone? Honestly, I don't know if that's an insult or compliment, but in comes the OnePlus 13, a phone that I will say got boring, but is that actually an insult or is it a compliment? Hello everyone, this is Matt from Real World Review, here again with another phone that got boring after the honeymoon phase. Anyways, let's talk about why this phone is amazingly boring. Honestly, don't feel like the specs really need to be talked about since the OnePlus line has been great since the 7 series and runs solid even today if you have a OnePlus 10 Pro or newer. Regardless, we gotta talk about how this phone looks really nice. I don't really care for white phones or any of the other colors that they sell for that matter, but in person, this white looks stunning. The back is glass, but the blue one I believe is a silicon polymer, or I guess vegan leather. This actually makes this phone thinner at 8.5 millimeters versus the 8.9 millimeters of the blue one, but also heavier at 213 grams versus the 210 grams of the blue one. Regardless, this phone is 6.41 inches tall, but honestly doesn't feel that heavy, even though 213 grams is a decent weight. The frame is regular old aluminum, even though it is polished, unfortunately. On the top, we do have a bunch of stuff, with this hole seeming to be an extra slot for the top speaker to give better stereo feel with the bottom speaker. Not sure if that's what's happening, but it does seem to sound pretty good. There's 3 other holes for what seems like a microphone on the top, but only the outer holes are actual holes for the single mic, while the other is a dot for the IR scanner. Yes, you can control your TV just like you used to be able to in the olden days, or like all the time for most China-based phones. The left side has the alert slider, something that is gone on the 15 for a button. Okay. The alert slider is still the best, even though I do use the action button on my iPhone for a flashlight, and that would kind of be cool to have. Then on the right, we have the volume and power buttons, which annoys me because OnePlus should have kept them separated on the other side, because that's really the best placement. On the bottom is a dual SIM tray, 2 microphone holes for the 2 microphones this time, as well as the 2 ovals for the bottom loudspeaker, which again gives us a nice stereo feel from the hole at the top and small slit for that earpiece loudspeaker. Then of course we have the USB-C 3.2 Gen 1 port, which not only allows for great transfer speeds, but super fast charging speeds, depending on your country and charger, with mine doing 80 watts, but with the option of 100 watt charging. On the front, we have a mostly flat screen with barely curved edges, which I'm glad to see, but still sucks for screen protectors. I really have an issue because mine lifted a little bit and forced me to change it, which I don't like to do normally when it comes with the screen protector. And the tempered glass is too big for the case, so I'm stuck with the plasticky TPU style one, which honestly isn't that bad, and I'll probably link it in the description because now that I'm thinking about it, it's actually pretty good. Regardless, the screen is big and amazing, being a 6.82 inch 1440p flexible 10-bit OLED screen that features LTPO 4.1, okay, and 120 Hz for the refresh rate, and a massive 1600 to 4500 nits of peak brightness for high brightness modes. But don't expect to ever see that. 800 nits of manual brightness is more realistic and still plenty bright. And when you see it outside, it feels the same as phones with less than 200 nits of brightness. None of this seems to affect the battery life though, and that continues into the always on display and the double tap to wake and sleep option. Speaking of, there's an ultrasonic fingerprint scanner at the bottom, a welcome choice instead of shoving an optical scanner at the very bottom thanks to the battery. There's also the front camera, obviously for face unlock, which works well for me, meaning I never really use the fingerprint scanner in the first place. There's a ceramic guard shield, but it comes with this sad screen protector I accidentally ruined here. The screen protector is prone to attracting dust, so I'm actually kind of glad to remove it, but like I said, the tempered glass is too much if you plan on using this phone with a case. Now the phone feels fast, because it is. The Snapdragon 8 Elite is still a more than capable processor, and the addition of 16GB of RAM and 512GB of UFS 4.0 storage makes it even better. Do note that it does range from 12 to 24GB of RAM and 256GB to 1TB of storage, but generally you'll see 256 or 512GB versions in the US. There are videos of people playing games on this, like actual computer games, and it's pretty crazy, or at least on this processor that happens. You can even, let me see, how do I say this without the Mario company getting mad? It plays this, if you're up to that journey. Now technically this video is not going to get enough views for me to want to censor what I'm saying right now, but you know, just in case. Everything else is what you expect: Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 5.4, a haptic motor. Thanks, OnePlus. I almost forgot about that. Now, the last thing is the battery, which is clearly really good. Like, super good. Something that doesn't surprise you if you saw the S25 Ultra and the S25 Edge. And technically, I'm the one who thinks that the Edge battery is actually good for its size. Anyways, this has a 6000 milliamp silicon carbon battery, which is still a lithium-ion battery technically, just with some silicon carbon added into it to allow for a lighter, thinner, and power-dense cell, or two cells in this case. It is up for debate as to how long these batteries will last capacity-wise. Generally, they're said to be shorter than traditional lithium-ion batteries, but in general, I would say that after a year or two on a normal phone, the capacity generally goes below 80 to 90% anyways. But that's not the only strange thing. It's the charging. So we have 50 watts of wireless charging with AirVook, a OnePlus proprietary charging standard, but when you're using a Qi 2 charger, expect, well, this is where I would say a number that I found, and technically it was 13 to 15 watts, and upon looking it up, I found people talking about how reviewers never test anything, and you know what? I agree, so I should. So, on a Qi 2 15-watt charger, the highest that I actually saw with my own eyes is a solid 7.3 watts. And for charging, expect under 35 watts of wired charging when you're using a normal charger that goes over 45 watts. Even though the phone will say SuperVOOC, even though it technically isn't, but then when you use the original charger, it gets confusing. It relies on real SuperVOOC charging for its proprietary 80 watts of charging, or 100 watts, or not. Officially, it's 80 watts, but also 100 watts with a specific charger, but the one that came in the box is not the 100 watt dual port charger. Yet, here's 100 watts. Sure, you need a 200 to 240 volt wall outlet, but this is a US plug, which is 100 to 130 volts, meaning only 80 watts out of this, but I guess the phone supports 100 watts technically, just not in the US? It's very confusing. Oh, and by the way, the 100 watt charger with the dual ports, this is all they sell in the US, and it's 80 watts. Apparently, countries like Peru and the Philippines actually have the same plugs with 220 volts, so theoretically, they can charge the phone faster than I can in my country. But in my test, from 1 to 20% took a little over 4 minutes, to 35% took about 8 minutes, 50% took under 12.5 minutes, 80% took 22.5 minutes, and 100% took 36.5 minutes, and it seems like it averages 56 to 60 watts per hour for the first 70%, hitting a max of 73 watts exactly. There's also reverse wireless charging of apparently 10 watts, but of course in normal OnePlus fashion, there's no mention of it on its spec page or really anywhere on their product pages. This has been a thing since the 9 series. But also getting 80 watts is pretty much impossible. Like I said, the highest I've ever seen goes under 75 watts. But when I look up videos, I don't see anyone showing real-time charging and real-time wattage, because shocker, your 100 watt charger doesn't charge at 100 watts all the time, nor does your 65 watts, or 45 watt, or 25 watt, or even, okay, maybe your 5 watt charger does, but you get the point. I really need to end this section, so I will say this. The phone's charging speed is so fast that the original charger that comes in the box is faster than any phone that you can buy on any carrier in the United States. Guaranteed, and years from now will probably still be accurate. Although Motorola and their 68 watt charging is pretty close. And yeah, they did dodge a bullet on the number below and above, right? Nice. Now, I didn't want to talk about this in the specs section because I think it deserves its own section. The camera set is great to a point. I will say that this would have been the P5D 50T and actually deserved that name, being the 5th and last generation of the Hasselblad color science and tuning, as well as being the first with a true 50T, being triple cameras on the back that are actually 50 megapixels. Shocker. The front is a 32 megapixel camera and is still not focusable, something that finally happened on the OnePlus 15. We do get 4K 60 frames per second for the first time, so it's not a weird downgrade like the OnePlus 11 got. Then on the back, like I said, we get the 50 megapixel ultra-wide camera, not the 150 degree one like the 10 Pro, but a normal 120 degree sensor that is focusable and looks great for being a 1/2.75 inch sensor, or slightly smaller than the front camera. Just like all cameras, we get 4K 60 30 frames per second, but just so you know, 120 frames per second at 4K is gone for some reason. Then we have the 50 megapixel telephoto sensor. That's a little bit over a half an inch sensor and actually looks pretty good at that 3x zoom. Then the main camera is the 50 megapixel sensor. That is the only one that's able to record 8K at 30 frames per second, if you actually care about that. Do note that there is still a movie mode that removed log recording for some reason and shoots 1644 by 3840 at 30 frames per second. Most movies are not at 30 frames per second, so don't know why they did that. One weird thing is that for 50 megapixel shots, you need to press high resolution mode, which is its own mode now, like I just said, not a toggle at the top like a normal OnePlus phone. I'll let you look at the shots that I took with this phone and I'll talk a little bit more. Enjoy. So the shots look good, but I do notice that things fall apart when there's less light, more than I notice on other phones. And if you wanted to use the other sensors at night, good luck. In bright light, the cameras are pretty spectacular. I really can't speak for the macro shots, but I am indifferent as to whether being a tetraprism telephoto camera is a better choice over the normal periscope. It does make the phone thinner generally, so maybe that's why they went that route, but personally I think the shots are great, but I did also notice the delay shots, where the photo you see isn't always what you capture, more of like half a second off. I remember this was an issue on the OnePlus 11 or as the OnePlus 12, and I thought they fixed it, but it feels like it can show up on this phone too, so it is something to think about. Another strange one is, like I was saying, the OnePlus 9 Pro and the 10 Pro had 4K 120 frames per second video, and then never again until the 15 series. I don't get why they did that. And no, it's not in the slow-mo settings, but we do get these options. Overall, I think this camera set deserves this camera look, but some of the omissions in the camera set really don't make sense at times. I will also remind you that we do get dual LED for the flash, laser autofocus for obviously autofocusing, and normal optical image stabilization on the main and telephoto cameras. And remember, all the rear sensors focus while the front doesn't. Now, am I disappointed in this phone? No. For a few reasons, this phone is better than the OnePlus 15, but the more you think about it, this should actually be the only OnePlus phone that you're looking for. They copied Sony in making the OnePlus 15 with a smaller and lower resolution screen, but they went with 165 Hz because 120 Hz is ancient slow. I'm joking, of course, but there are some small improvements like obviously the processor, better water resistance, and UFS 4.1 over the super old, super slow UFS 4.0. Joking again, but the front camera becomes focusable while the rear cameras all get slightly smaller sensor-wise, though we do get 3.5 times zoom instead of the 3 times zoom on the telephoto on the OnePlus 13, and it's back to the periscope camera. And all of that is fine, but the OnePlus 13 is the last Hasselblad phone for this model, so the 15 not only has worse camera sensors, but worse color science, proving that Hasselblad actually did do something good on these cameras in the OnePlus 9 through the OnePlus 13. The battery and charging are bigger and slightly faster, so there's no arguing there, but at what cost? Well, even with the 15T being out, the 15 is still expensive unless you're okay with the China or India version. Definitely make sure that you're buying the right phone with the correct bands for your carrier. Mine was $540 total, while the 15 I was looking at was $900 at the time for the same 512 gigabytes, so for me it was a no-brainer to get the 13 for the small downsides, but many upsides. Also, the word downsides and downfall are not interchangeable. The downfall of the OnePlus 15 would mean that it didn't sell well, whereas the downsides of the 15 would be talking about what is bad about it. Just so we're on the same page. I will say that I like the design of the OnePlus 15 better, but the OnePlus 13 looks more OnePlus to me. Also, long live the alert slider. These are strange to review because for $500 you can get this, probably an S25 Ultra, or, well, I guess those are the main phones with this processor, maybe a Razr Ultra. Having used those two phones, I would say that I like the OnePlus better. A curved-ish screen is annoying, but it doesn't affect usability, just screen protector ability. The camera produces nice shots, not Samsung shots or Apple shots, which I like that. And the battery life, while smaller than the OnePlus 15 by a decent amount, it is still spectacular, and those charging speeds are dramatically different than phones above its price point. There's also Aqua Touch 2.0, so you can use this phone in water, but I'll trust that it works and not test it myself. Also, 2160 Hz for PWM is important for those that are affected by that and have to suffer with LCD phones. I don't suffer from this, so this is a non-issue, but also great to see for those that do suffer from it. And when compared to the OnePlus 10 Pro, the X-Pan has some filters and works on more cameras, and it's definitely a look, but personally I like it. X-Pan video would be pretty cool, but I guess that'll never be. Is this perfect? No, but in this case, settling for a OnePlus 13 was actually a great choice. Generally, there's a negative connotation in the word settle, so in this case, I will say that you do actually never settle. And that's my review of the OnePlus 13, the lucky OnePlus device. You know, they skipped the OnePlus 14 because 14, or 4 in general, is an unlucky number, but they offer 4 software updates, but also the OnePlus Nord 4 exists. You can say it's in a different market, but then we should call the OnePlus 15 the OnePlus 14 outside of China and the OnePlus 15 in China. Also, OnePlus 13 literally equals 14. Have your superstitions, I'm not judging at all, I'm just pointing out the flawed logic. Anyways, thanks for listening to my mini rant there, but what do you think about this phone? Is it perfect, or is the 15 much better? And of course, this wouldn't be a OnePlus video without a OnePlus 7 mention. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks for joining the 1%, and thanks for watching.